friends. It's time for Bring It In Troops, little Zoom from Quarantine show today. Very excited to be joined, of course, by David Thorpe and Lindsay Gibbs of Power Plays. Nice to have you, Lindsay.
Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Big day. It's a big day.
Big day. Yes.
I think I spent like my whole life wishing sports would like matter outside of sports and basically being disappointed. But thanks to some understanding I've gained from reading Power Plays, like I think that is different now. And can just talk us through what happened here with Kelly Loeffler in the U.S. Senate, if you would.
My gosh, it's such a remarkable story. So Kelly Loeffler, nobody really knows if it's Loeffler or Loeffler, and it's one of my favorite things that she's such a despicable person. Nobody cares to like find out, like usually with pronunciations, it's like you want to respect the person, but even like NPR goes back and forth. Like it's hysterical to me. But anyways, so I'll probably just rotate during this talk. But so Kelly Loeffler was pretty much just like anonymous, like billionaire businesswoman who co-owned the Atlanta Dream. I'm an avid WNBA fan and really did not know who she was or anything about her. And then she decided to really when in 2018 or 2019, one of the Georgia senator decided to resign for health reasons, and everyone in the WNBA community was kind of taken by storm. Like nobody really was like thought that this was something that was going to happen. And immediately her ties to the WNBA team, she's the co-owner of the Atlanta Dream, started to be fodder for the people on the far right to attack her and say, she's not a real Republican, like, you shouldn't, she shouldn't get this appointment. So she started very quickly making it clear that she was the Trumpiest of the Trumpsters and that, she wanted the wall and that Black Lives Matter was, racist and, pro-police, pro-gun, all of this stuff just, started to get louder and louder and louder about it. And it became a real problem for the WNBA starting especially in July. So this story really starts it's about July 5th. WNBA players are moving into IMG for their quarantine season. They're the first, one of the first leagues to get off the ground. There's so much stress on these players. Everybody's anxious, being COVID tested, trying to figure out the places. I mean, you can't even remember during that time how stressed the players were. And what Loeffler does instead of supporting her players was write an open letter to Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, basically saying that all the social justice initiatives for the league, which are primarily this year the Say Her Name campaign and Black Lives Matter, that the league should in no way be supporting that it's mob rule, and that Black Lives Matter is like anti-Semitic and racist and is just for division, and that she does not support in any way the Black Lives Matter movement. So there immediately became this upswell of what is the league going to do? What are the players going to do? And specifically, what are the Atlanta Dream going to do? I mean, can you even imagine like the stress you're already under in this bubble, dealing with obviously all the, racial justice initiatives and focusing on that and trying to be safe in the quarantine and try to get ready to play a season. And then all of a sudden your owner, the owner of your team, somebody who like before all this, I'm getting blurry, I don't know why, but, before all this, had just had players over to her house and like nobody kind of known that like this was who she was, is really starting to use her team as political fodder, as political props, and attacking them to advance her political career. A lot of players not on the Atlanta Dream started calling for the WNBA to oust her. The WNBA, by the way, completely silent. WNBA, we have to be very careful in this conversation to separate between the WNBA as an entity and then the WNBA players themselves. Because the league, there's been no move to oust Loeffler from.
You can call her whatever you want.
Well, yeah, we don't even care. Like, who even cares about her name at this point? We don't have to say it. Like after today, like don't even have to say it anymore. But so the WNBA wasn't doing anything. But the players, the Atlanta Dream players, issued a joint letter August 10th, and this was the first kind of clue of what they were doing. The letter did not mention Kelly Loeffler's name. once. My dog has found a toy in the background. If you hear,
No, it's fine.
that's what's going on there. You know, but it said, you know, it was one of it was the dreams for.
Hey, Lindsay, I'm going to kick you off. Can you get back on?
Games. Yes.
We're gonna. Okay. Here.
So-
Whoa. Bye, Lindsay.
Sorry, everyone. She'll be right back. Just
Usually it's my Wi-Fi, so I'm a little pleased that it wasn't me this time.
Well, it's a perfect pause. I just see in your face, Henry, react to her talking about how the league stayed silent. I just thought you looked.
We're gonna circle back to that one.
Oh, we've heard this story before, right? Right. We all know who the real league is, right? There's just one league here. There's not two.
I'm just gonna also fill in a little detail, which I thought was fascinating, which is, do you know why they're called the Atlanta Dream?
No.
It's because I have a dream speech.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Yeah. There we go. Hey,
Now
there's
that-
Lindsay. Hey.
now that most people don't use the word irony well. That is ironic.
Yeah. So I was just mentioning that they're called the Atlanta Dream because of the I have a dream speech.
Yeah, so that's another part of this. And so all of a sudden they come out of the bus, the Phoenix Mercury. Did you all hear this part? I don't know when I froze.
No.
Or came out.
But- Yeah, we were getting into their letter, and then
Right.
maybe we just need a minute of what preceded getting off the bus. That'd be that seems like it's pretty awesome.
Okay, so behind the scenes, the players are trying to figure out, what are we going to do? How are we going to respond to this? They very quickly did not want to get into a war of words with Kelly Loeffler that would ultimately just be used to bring more attention to her, because for her at this point, the racism and the attacking of the WNBA was something she was trying to use to benefit her campaign. So the players really recognized that, I think, more than media members like myself did at the time. And it was in the group chat on WhatsApp for the WNBA players executive committee. I think it was Sue Bird who first kind of mentioned, what if we look at, she's happening in November, what is her opponent? The WNBA had great connections with Stacey Abrams. She's on the WNBA Players Association Board of Directors, or Board of Advocates, I think is the exact name. So of course she's so attached to Georgia, so they reached out to her. And at the time, it was not clear who the Democratic opponent was really going to be. There were multiple Democrats in this race. Raphael Warnock was only polling at 9%. Matt Lieberman, I think is his son, Joe Lieberman. So, you know, woo. But Raphael Warnock was only polling at 9%. But Abrams knew Warnock. Abrams had already endorsed Warnock and kind of made this connection. And so the WNBA player said, this is interesting, but if we're going to endorse someone, like, that's a huge deal. Like, it's one thing to tell everyone to go out to vote, you know, it's another thing to be very clear about, you know, endorsing a candidate, especially one that people don't really know about. So they did their homework, you know, in between these games, in between these movements, they got on the phone with Warnock. They grilled him about his record. They found out that he was a guy like they could really support. That he believed in what they believed on. And on August 4th, for the first nationally televised game the Dream had all season, it was an ESPN game, both the Dream and the Phoenix Mercury, their opponents, came off their buses wearing Vote Warnock t-shirts. And I know that was the first time I had ever heard of Raphael Warnock. And I think it's the first time most people had ever heard of Warnock. And it became a movement. Players from across the league ended up doing this. Not every single team, but the majority. And in 3 days, his campaign raised north of $250,000 and gained 4,000 individual donors, which is just huge. You know, and that really allowed his campaign to go to the next level. Within 3 weeks, he had his first political ad out, you know, which you have to think that money, that big influx of cash really helped make that television ad possible. And by the end of September, Warnock is, Vote Warnock t-shirts are now, people are wearing them all across the country. And he's now, according to the Quinnipiac poll, by the end of September, was in the lead in that race, even above Kelly Loeffler. So it's this thing, like you were saying, a lot of times athlete activism, it's full of platitudes. It does matter in like the abstract way. It's great that players are doing this, but we haven't ever really seen something have this concrete of an impact on American democracy from athletes. I mean, it is, at the time, they had no clue that this was going to end up helping flip the Senate. And one of my favorite things is that after the WNBA season ended, the advocacy did not. These players have continued to support Warnock.
I mean, they literally vetted him. It wasn't just that they picked someone. It could have been really ugly if they hadn't done their homework, but they did a really professional job as a political organization of, is he our guy? Are we all in? And then once he went through a bunch of Zooms, right? Then he got their approval, and now they have an organization, right? This is a real thing now.
It's a real thing. I mean, and it's so great because this infrastructure that they built starting in 2016 with their Black Lives Matter protest really put the WNBA Players Association in a place where they could organize something like this, and where they were all on the same page with something like this. And, he told Nancy Armour of USA Today, Warnock did, that, when he first got on the call, he did not think with the WNBA players. He thought he was going to be encouraging them, right? He thought it was just going to be a little pep talk from him to them. He had no clue that they were vetting him for a possible endorsement. And of course, it developed into this just monumental partnership that, you don't want to do anything to discredit or diminish the work that the activists on the ground in Georgia have done. They're the true heroes of this fight. But the WNBA endorsement was a pivotal point in this race.
David's a coach. I know that my first thought on reading your story was this is offense, is this is Subert and company thinking okay, so we can't really play defense against Kelly, however you say her last name, but we can play offense, right? We can score more points on her. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's this is a locker room way of thinking, right? Which
it's
is
changing the game completely, right? It's one person's playing, this one style, and you realize that's just going to drag you down into the doldrums if you play that style, right? You might be able to win, but it's going to be an ugly game. So you just can't, like you said, you just come out and completely change the game. The players still to this day will not mention Loeffler's name. And I think what was really special about this is, maybe it's because they can't pronounce it, I don't know, but no, it was very strategic to not say her name in a season where saying her name, was about lifting up victims of police brutality. And I think that what ended up happening was, instead of being used, they ended up using Loeffler to, get their real message across, which was, these are the values we care about. And this is someone who stands for those. So we don't care what you're doing over there. You do whatever you're doing over there. You keep doing it. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this attention and push it and push for this person who stands for what we believe in. And it turned what could have been, what was a negative, what was an awful situation, into, just the ultimate positive.
There's something here. There's something here looking forward. Not that I'm ready to just stop celebrating now, but there's something looking forward about combining what President Obama advised the NBA players on using their platform, and then what the WNBA players did, which was really use their platform to include having the integrity of vetting him, of having a process. So every league should be, Lindsay, we need you to keep writing about this stuff and talking about this, as will we, because it's a blueprint, not just for celebrities and athletes, but for any of us to have integrity as you go through that process, but especially people in positions of power and influence, because they're admired and on with all these Twitter follows, whatever, that integrity to the process gives them gravity, right? Gives them gravitas, right? It gives them something more than just being famous and shilling perfume or a car, which celebrities tend to do. this really did change our government.
Change our government. It's wild.
If they didn't have that process, I don't know that it would have been as valuable. And why should we be surprised? I have both a mother and a wife. This is normally how women, when they care about an issue, go through the process. Look, talk to anyone we know who's got to place their kids in school. There is nothing willy-nilly about that when it's important to them, right? There's something to be learned from this going forward, I think.
Yeah, I think that it's not just the integrity, it's the discipline. Like, I don't know that I would have had the discipline not to just bite back immediately, not to be reactionary. But they did. And, you know, I talked to Elizabeth Williams, the Center for the Atlanta Dream, who's the longest tenured Dream player by far. They had a very new team this year. It was one of those off seasons with almost, you know, complete roster turnover. I say this season, I mean the 2020 season. And so Elizabeth Williams was one of only 2 players who had been on the team the previous season. And Elizabeth Williams had been with the team for about 5 years. And so she's this really quiet player that I've been covering for years, just one of those like silent stalwarts of the game. And she became one of the leaders. And she's the one who had the discipline, I think, really to say, like, we need to make sure that when we do something, when we respond to her, that it's not reactionary, that it's impactful. And I think it's safe to say that they accomplished that. And one of my favorite little tie-ins, and I wrote about this in Power Plays just really quickly because I meant to mention this earlier, is that, you know, the team was named after the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech. And Stacey Abrams was one of the people who helped bring the dream to Atlanta, bring the WNBA to Atlanta, along with former WNBA president Lisa Borders, who was kind of the driving force. And here they are supporting, you know, Warnock, who is the senior pastor at Martin Luther King's Jr.'s church, right? The same church that Martin Luther King Jr., you know, preached at, and that his father was a senior pastor at for his whole life. And there was just some beautiful kind of full circle symmetry moments there.
So what happens next? Like, will she still, are they going to kick her out in some way? Can they, how does this go?
I have no idea what's next. I think one of the problems is that there's not a great, and I think the NBA went through this with Sterling as well. Like, there's not a great process for kicking out an owner, right? Like, there is not, that's not something written in the bylaws of you almost have to publicly pressure them to sell. Or, you know, go through drastic measures. And that's nothing that the WNBA has done yet. I do know, I mean, obviously the league's people behind the scenes of the league are not happy about what's been going on. And I think everybody would like her to be gone. And my hope is just that she gets a bid that, you know, that she can't refuse. I think the most likely thing is not for her to be forced out, unfortunately. But for, you know, for her to sell the team, for her to be bought out. And LeBron James tweeted just last night that he might buy the Atlanta Dream. And these are the type of things I want to see more of. Like, I'm really sick of, in moments like this, everyone lifting up the WNBA's heroes and then going back to completely ignoring them the next day. You know, one of the things was that it was emblematic of this was there were a lot of people tweeting a screenshot of the Seattle Storm in Vote Warnock shirts with the caption, "Thank you, Atlanta Dream," you know? And it was just like, it's so emblematic of how we're so willing to like want heroes and want these nice, tidy stories. And look, I wrote about it. I get it. You know, like, this is a phenomenal story and they deserve all the credit. But the way you really thank them is like following the lead, like buying tickets, buying, you know, hoodies, supporting them. Like, that's how can we repay the WNBA for what they've done for our country? It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy, you know, watch their games when they're on TV, root for a team and support them. And if you have the money, if you are LeBron James, if you are a multimillionaire or billionaire, look at buying WNBA teams. Especially the
Okay, I'll do it. I'm in. I'll do it.
Okay, all right, yeah. That was directed directly to you, Henry. That was right to you.
Do you have Gerard Hector, frequent contributor, would love to join the conversation if you have a few more minutes before you have to go and let you go in a second. Yeah. Okay. Judy, maybe Gerard can join us. And really fast, while he's joining us, I know before they kicked out Donald Sterling, they did like a straw poll of the Board of Governors, and basically Adam had the support to do it. What would happen in a straw poll of WNBA governors now, do you think?
It's so tough. I think honestly, I think there's a lot of them are hoping, well, now that she's not senator anymore, maybe this will all go away and fade away. I think they're going to be sorely disappointed that that's really not the case. That these players aren't going to want to come and play in Atlanta. Players aren't going to want to come to this team in free agency. And you only have 12 WNBA teams and 144 spots. So that's pretty, for players to be willing to not go to any team. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 players in the entire league that can call their own shots, about where they can end up. So I think what we're gonna, have to see is just more pressure. Now, she has not been on the Board of Governors or participating in any active WNBA stuff since she became a senator. And so the league has used that as kind of an excuse for like not doing anything. Her co-owner, Mary Brock, has been the one at the meetings, the one kind of doing the work and doing the governing. But it's tough because she's got so much money, and what WNBA teams have not had are people willing to invest money over a decade and keep paying it. And that's what she's done. And I think that had built up a lot of goodwill because, I mean, you all know, or NBA fans, that Atlanta fans aren't always the most like loyal basketball supporters, right? They're not always in these filled arenas. The Dream have had that problem just like the Hawks have at times, but Leffler hasn't budged since 2010. But this goes beyond that, and that's why right now we really need people with money willing to step in, because that will solve the problem. I think people were afraid to act because if they push her out, they were very afraid that nobody was going to keep that team in Atlanta, right? That there was going to be nobody else willing to come in. I think that was a legitimate fear when she first became senator back in 2019. I'm like, it's, I don't have that like I can't quote anybody for that, but like, that's a sense I get that was a legitimate fear from other WNBA owners. And it was, and that's why they're really afraid to act. And, I think the WNBA is in a much stronger place than it was 2 years ago. I think we're now seeing models such as the Los Angeles NWSL team of, celebrities and people with money coming in and investing in women's sports. And that's why we need people like LeBron James and people with influence and money to get it. It's not that expensive to buy a WNBA team if you have a lot of money. This is an investment, and this is a way that you can go well beyond just saying, I have a daughter, so I love women, and I like women's sports, and this is how you can really, really make a difference.
Well, and he can help promote it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he'd be building his own investment value.
Yeah.
By buying it and then promoting the hell out of it. Yeah, making it cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be incredible.
Gerard, sir, you have the floor.
Lindsay, thanks for joining us. The WNBA is obviously sort of grown in its position of power. The players they've been always doing this stuff behind the scenes, right? Sort of advocating and doing a lot of this work. And it wasn't really until recently that people knew about it. But how much has someone like WNBPA executive director Terry Jackson meant to the strengthening of this league and its players and the position of prominence they have now?
She's been phenomenal. I will say, up front, I really wish there was more cohesion between the WNBA-PA and the NBA-PA. And I think that we're all missing out on a lot of power there, and that Michelle Roberts and Terry Jackson do not have the closest relationship. But what Terry Jackson does behind the scenes is the way she empowers the players, the way she fights for these players, and the way she puts them in the spotlight and navigates some really tough situations. I mean, all of this looks obvious in hindsight, right? But it's not when you're on the ground, right? And the person who's cutting the checks, right, is someone who is all of a sudden, the villain of the league, in a league that hasn't, that has had a lot of franchises full, that hasn't always been, supported. So it's been such a tricky situation, and it's not just Terry Jackson, it's the entire WNBA Players Association, and this is all such a testament to the power of labor and the power of unions, because WNBA, this is something that I've just kind of recently been doing a lot of work on over the past few years, but the WNBA players, they founded their union in the second year of the league, and so many people said you're going to destroy your league. It is way too soon for a union, right? For a players union. Like, this league is fledgling, and there was so much fear mongering. And, but what they did is they realized, like, we don't have any benefits. We don't have any free agency. We don't have anything. Like, it wasn't just about the pay. They had nothing. They had to refight for everything the NBA had already fought for. It wasn't like the NBA fought for these, these perks. And then when the WNBA formed, they're like, we'll just give it to them. No, that's not how these things usually work, right? They started back at the bottom. And so this is now 25 years of a union in action, right? This is one leadership group building on the next, building on the next, building on the next. And since, Terry Jackson took over, it's really taken it to the next level, and the work Nneka Ogwumike has done, and Sue Bird, and Elizabeth Williams, Lasia Clarendon, all of these players just deserve to be, the power can be overstated, but I also don't want to act like this was an overnight thing. Like, the more work I do into realizing that how soon the WNBA union started, because all gains are only incremental, right? But since they started so early on in the league, that's why we are where we are now, because it's been able to build off of that infrastructure year after year.
There's a really creepy part of sports, which has been described somewhat like a bunch of players had dinner, as you mentioned, at Kelly Loeffler's house. And there is this kind of understanding that you have to do stuff like that. Where, like, there's some broker, you just have to go and charm. And that's just that's built in even in some high school, right? But certainly in college.
Yeah, absolutely, in high school. Yeah.
Creepy. It's creepy. It's creepy.
It's creepy. It is. You're right. It's very creepy. It's and it's very, like, there's a very patriarchal, white supremacist, like, undertones to all of it. And I'm not saying like every instance of that. I'm just saying there are undertones, right? Like, that's what this is built on. And so once again, it brings to, let's get some more diversity of ownership in there. And, let's get more Black people. Be great to have some Black women as well, actually, like, owning teams, actually in the leadership. I mean, the Dream are actually one of only 2 teams that are owned by women. The other is the Seattle Storm, who are pretty much on the complete opposite political spectrum, officially endorsing Joe Biden, having Planned Parenthood nights. Like, those owners are very progressive. Otherwise the league is owned by white men. Like, all the teams are owned by white men. And so, it's really time that that model gets changed. And that's how we're going to be able to keep seeing progress getting made. I think it's kind of the only way forward. And like you said, getting rid of these, like, gross kind of norms that exist in the sports world.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, Lindsay, for sports mattering and explaining it to us. Thank you so much. And I guess I gotta get a sweatshirt. I think that's
I think this means everybody's got to get an orange hoodie now. So
get the orange hoodie.
All right. Thank you for saving America.
We can do. Thanks for having me on. It was great talking to you all.
All right, we'll do it again. Okay.
Bye.
Take care. I guess we should talk about the NBA for a second. Does that seem like a good idea?
I mean, what? After all, how do you go from this inspirational, amazing story? And we haven't even mentioned, well, I guess Lindsay did mention Stacey Abrams a couple of times, but the fact, what we're dealing with, and the fact that so many of these women, many of them minorities, and women have, looks like they've changed our government forever. Well, hopefully forever. To talk about, how the Cavaliers are playing good defense, it just doesn't seem to work. But I'm happy to try.
Well, we can. There's a lot more. Lindsay had to go. I would love to talk more, but, like, one of the things on my mind was we didn't see, and we've never seen NBA players with a targeted political campaign like this, right? We haven't seen vote for NBA teams like this, but in the bubble. But part of me is like, I think they've raised the bar now. You know, that night after the Bucks strike,
yeah,
you know, they had a meeting about what to do next, and ended up not being so specific like this. Wait, can you guys hear me?
I can. Yeah,
you were skipping for a minute.
Yeah, you just are. You're Giffy. Yeah, you're. They just talked. Yeah, they were more general, is what you were saying.
Yeah, and I think that's probably not going to be the winning. Right. You're not going to win the meeting with that approach anymore, right? Like now it's going to be like, no, what? How are we actually going to win? How are we going to pick an issue that matters to us and win?
They don't have to just say, "Hey, vote." They're allowed to say, "Hey, vote for this," or "Vote for this person, this cause," right? Like the Dream did.
But there is something interesting there, and Lindsay talked about it when she was on, about how the WNBA started its union in year 2, right? And unions are a fundamental part about how, you know, we, the masses, can control our own destiny, right? Like, because we are in fact the labor, right? So if you withhold that labor, management has to then react to that, right? And if you withhold it for a long period of time, they start like, look, we can't make our profits and all our things if we don't do things that are in the interest of this workforce that we need. And so again, Henry, you've talked about this, Coach, we've talked about it. Like, the players are, that's what you turn on the TV to see, or go to the arena. You don't go to see Mark Cuban or whoever. You go to see these dudes. If they all decided, you know what, we don't need you guys actually for anything. We literally need you for nothing. We can do this ourselves. Like, when you can, and them specifically, because they are such a specialized labor force, right? There's only so many people in the world that can do that particular job. Like, I think that's sort of where they have to think about it, right? How can we take that back into our hands?
Well, and they're getting the practice. We saw the Disney bubble. We saw the Disney bubble. Now we see what's happening. No fans, more or less, you know, except for a couple of spots are in there. The games are still super competitive. Well, more or less competitive. They don't need big arenas, which is what the owner is really providing, right? They can negotiate their own deal. And let me tell you something, getting 5,000 serious fans in a regular sized arena instead of these gigantic, you know, places that we have, the atmosphere would be amazing. Imagine Lakers versus Clippers, right? Celtics versus Sixers in one of those bandboxes, right? They used to play back in the day. Turn the AC off if you want. That would be incredible. And Henry made a point. In fact, I think it's coming to fruition. I think someone's going to the Monday national championship college football game, paying $100,000+ per seat to sit at the 50-yard line, like down low, whatever. So think about what you could charge if you only allowed 5,000 people or 3,000 people in. You could charge a lot more money. I'm not suggesting they should do that. I'm only saying there's other things players can do where they own their own league in a sense.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. It really is. And also this thing about the WNBA, you know, Kathy Engelbert organization had no voice in this, right? Yeah. I have a guess as to why, right? Which is the same reason that NBA's had no voice in anything anti-Trump, right? I think that there's a knee-jerk sense that you have to butter up some billionaires to do what the league does, right? That's more what the league does, right? They are a collection of billionaires with employees, and the top employee is the commissioner, right? And I think it's just knee-jerk that this is what you have to do. And I don't know, like, you know, everyone talks about the Green Bay Packers model, you know, where there isn't a core owner.
Right.
Up in the chat today. I don't think LeBron's going to lead that. Like with his money, he acts like a billionaire, not like a man of the people. But which is a whole topic we could explore. But I do think that, like, it's under explored how that could be used, right? Like, we don't really know if it could work or not. One of the things that owners have to do is write checks all the time, you know, for operating losses. You know, do a group of, you know, workers in Atlanta want to do that? I don't know, but I think it's I don't like that we assume that if you're an NCAA player, you have to go butter up the donors. You have to go butter up the billionaires. Like that doesn't have to be true. I don't think. I think there's a way it could be different, better.
No, it just is true, right? Because that's where the money flow lines right now. Like in college, like whether it's college football primarily, or even college basketball to a degree, the money flows into the program from these boosters and donors. Well, they just don't want their courtside seats for that. Okay, yeah, they get that, but they also want to know, hey, I'm calling player X over to come to my house and come entertain my kid or whatever, or hang out. Like that's part of what they expect for the money they pay. And if that stops, no more money. And no one, none of these schools are going to say we don't want the money. Of course they want the money. So it's ultimately, and this is my rant against the greatest band of all time, the capitalist machine. This is what happens when you let the money get to a point where it does. It just corrupts everything. And you can't take it out. The horse is out the barn door now. What are you going to do?
Yeah, you get the benefits flowing to a few, right? And then as opposed to many. All right. David, you have anything else you want to say on this topic before we move on to NBA action? It's fantastic.
Before we move on to a topic I actually understand. Yeah, sure. No, I'm good. Yeah, we can. No, we're good. We can talk. I see that Greg just put the BU Holy Cross game playing in masks. You and I talked about this right before we came on air. We can talk about that, or I watched games last night. I watched your team. I watched them this morning too on tape. We can talk about whatever. I watched LeBron. Let's start with LeBron.
Okay.
Did you guys see LeBron last night?
Looked pretty good. Yeah.
He's good at basketball.
He makes but here's what I'm talking about in particular. He makes a really bad, tough shot in a very, very close game with Memphis. Fade away, 18-footer, 20-footer. And then he does he looks at the Memphis bench and simmer down. I don't know what he's saying because the camera's behind him, but he very vigorously puts his hands down like, hey, I got this. You're done. I was surprised to see him do that. And then he got a big steal. He was doing what he could do to make sure they didn't lose that game. And
we're saying Dylan Brooks is too small to guard me. One of the two.
It might have been, but I mean, that is not a high probability shot.
No.
Memphis did a good job on that. Yeah, you're right. He could have been. He was really low to the ground. I didn't think about that. You're probably right.
To your point, Coach, that is still, if you have a chance to beat a LeBron team and the shot that he takes for you to potentially lose the game is that, I take that 100% of the time.
Oh yeah, he misses it 75% of the time, or 70%, whatever the number is. He made that one. He's missed plenty of others, but I like that he was so demonstrative. I also would tell you, you're going to laugh at this. I don't watch every minute the Lakers play, but I've seen him a good amount. I've never seen Anthony Davis miss a three this year. I'm not joking. He took a corner three yesterday, and I thought to myself, okay, this could be the one. Nope, he made it. I haven't even looked to see what he's shooting on the year. He was 4 of 10 from three last night. But I've seen nothing but makes from him. I don't even think he's trying. He and LeBron, I swear to you, I feel like the killer whale that's knocking the seal up in the air. Those two guys wanted a tough game against a pretty bad Memphis team without John Morant. Although they're playing okay without him, surprisingly, I felt like they were the killer whales. You know what? Let's make this a close game and just see what it's like in the end. And they did it. They pulled it out. Yeah, I don't advise it, but they're very good.
That's an interesting point, Coach. For LeBron, obviously he's so smart about how he manages his body and his minutes, and Anthony probably doing the same thing. How much of this is look, man, we got to go on cruise control for most of this season, because if we want to repeat, we cannot play balls out in game 6, because this is not going to work.
They did it last year.
They're not handling that well, I don't think, right? LeBron's not LeBron, right? To my eyes, and, we can explore this as a whole other topic another day, but he's showing his age a little bit. There are a lot of plays where he's very stationary. I was pointing out to David, he was against the Blazers. He was guarding Derek Jones Jr. with the game on the line, and Derek Jones is just the guy standing in the corner, which means LeBron's just the guy standing maybe going to help, and then doesn't help. And then when the Blazers score, he's like, "You guys, what the fuck?" This is Chase down block guy, right? So I feel like he's a little bit Washington DC Michael Jordan right now to me, where he's like, "Oh, I'm still getting the ball, and I'm still the best player out here." but I'm not going to do all that stuff, right? And his, his numbers are a little down because of that. But it does seem to me like Washington D.C. Michael Jordan that he's like the tool that he's going to rely on is his shooting ability, and he does seem to be interested in these like Steph Curry type very difficult shots this year, right? More than it seems in the past, where I'm like, oh, he's going to try to age with shooting, which probably will work really well.
Well, his team is doing it too. They're top 3 in the league in shooting, but 3-point shooting percentage right now, which is something they need to do. Let that the segue to the Clippers, who are not playing defense, and I'd be more worried about that if I didn't know what David Griffin once told. I think it was Tom Haberstroh and I on where he said that Ty Lue didn't do defense in the regular season. He just took over in the postseason, and it really worked. There's no question it did. I'm wondering, is that what's happening here? Because there's no reason that team shouldn't be a high-level defensive team, and they're just not. Last night they lost. Paul George didn't play. They played fine. I actually like what they're doing. They're just. I think they realize too. I had an assistant coach tell me yesterday. His head coach is playing a lot of guys, a lot of minutes. He's not playing a lot of guys overall. And he said to me, quote, "We're going to be dead after 35 games." So contrast that to LeBron standing in the corner on defense late in the game. The Clippers really not, throwing it all in defensively. I don't think they'll be dead after 35 games. And Milwaukee too. Milwaukee's not playing defense like they have in the past. Yeah. They're shooting it great, but they're not playing defense like they have. And so it'll be interesting to see as we get near late spring, these guys have more energy. I could see them getting on some win streaks late in the year because they're rested.
So we all know, because we watch a ton of NBA, that regular season ball and playoff ball are different, right? And I think we're going to see that sort of gap, I think, more this season, to your point, Coach, because every team is doing this. They have that 17 games in 31 days, which is basically every other night. That's insane. So they're like, look, we're just going to chill out this month. And then as we start getting towards March, then we'll start ramping ourselves up, because you can't sustain that for 8, 9, whatever, how long it would be, 9 months to a championship. You're going to break, literally.
And there's something else too, Henry and Gerard. Yeah, go ahead.
Really fast. This is not rest. Playing in an NBA game is not rest, right? It's 4% off the top, right? And actually, I think I can make a case that when you're not playing the way that you train and 100%, I think injuries might be even a little higher, because you don't step exactly with the precision you normally step or whatever, because your part of you is taking it easy. I know they always say in skiing, you always get injured on the last run of the day because you don't really ski, right? You're not really noticing everything. And to me, LeBron standing in the corner, not really reacting to the help defender, is the same LeBron who's going to be late and take an elbow in a weird way that he would normally anticipate. I just feel like this is the dumbest way to preserve LeBron for the championship, right? We're going to wear him out almost exactly the same. What he needs is that day off. Actually, he needs the week off so he can really train and recover from the training and then go play. This is the one where we're just well, we can't change it, so we're just kind of take it a little easier. Earlier when I was talking about the W players had a strategy to win, as opposed to just reacting to college offense. This is not a strategy to win rest. This is just oh, try a little rest, okay. It's not gonna work. He's gonna be fucking wrecked. This is a way to wreck LeBron.
Well,
okay,
I don't remember if we wrote this or talked about this, but I think we had a piece about who's going to win the pandemic break. Yeah, Miami was one of them. We now know, right? We saw what they did. LA certainly did a good job in the pandemic break. It's a little bit different now. Who is going to win the mandatory days where you can't practice? In the past, they would still get in the gym and at least do something, which, as Henry is saying, isn't really resting. If you're in New York right now, if you're in LA right now and you're a visiting team, you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
You are stuck in your Four Seasons hotel.
Yeah.
So how are you handling that? Are you, like what Henry says, are you training to recover, which would be really wise, right? Because they can't play. I think there is something to why we're seeing such terrible games. There are teams who are so out of rhythm. They're not doing their typical routine, pregame shoot around, get extra shots up. And there are teams who fly into a city right before a game and go right to the gym and get some shots in. Not happening. That doesn't mean they won't acclimate. I think they will, but they're not acclimating now. A team that handles that time to say, hey, you know what? Since we can't get in the gym, let's just shut it down. Let's get to our rehab people and let's handle that better. If that starts happening, you'll see some teams doing better when they actually play.
But Steve Nash talked about this last night in his media session, and we asked him about, this again, the every other night thing. And he's like, look, you kind of want to use shoot around sometimes as an opportunity, but it's also like you're negating the rest part. So if we have shoot around, right, a guy's got to come in at whatever time we do at 10, drive a little bit further away back from home. They're not getting their nap or whatever they normally, they got to come right back to the arena for the game. It's just like this condensed schedule is really causing teams to have to think and adjust on the fly. And as we always know, those teams that are smart and innovate and figure out, look, we're shutting this dude down for a week or whatever, they're probably going to do better. And everybody else, their stars are going to break.
Yeah.
And they actually, Devin brought up, it looks like, John, you read this extra home a couple of days ago about trainers. Yep. And you should read it. I really recommend it. But one of the key parts was that a lot of trainers are saying they haven't had their hands on players' bodies in weeks because they're around the clock dealing with COVID protocols, including like someone gets a false positive, and there's one anecdote, they get a notification at 2:45 a.m. and then till 8 a.m. they're just dealing with the fallout of that. Players start rolling in. They're supposed to be like, keeping players healthy on top of their games, and they're not even really dealing with that at all. And like at one point they talk about, the league's directives to the trainers are like 15-page memos that are updated routinely. So they just get more and more and more emails. They're supposed to just, read it. And one guy had an amazing quote, which was, with most of these kinds of health directives, if we get 90% compliance, we're like overjoyed. It's like with this one, with COVID, we might as well have done nothing, right? Like once you have 10% of your players breaking the rules.
Oh, we lost that.
That last part I added, yep. But yeah, I thought that was like, this is not the same as helping the players avoid getting coronavirus. This is like, the health staff, which David would like to have figuring out how to keep you at your peak soft tissue wise, living in 4 seasons, is instead not even focused on that at all, right? Overwhelmed.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like no two franchises are created alike. So the teams that have the robust athletic training and performance staff probably are going to manage this a little bit better because they have more bodies. But if you're a super cheap owner and you've got like 2 or 3 dudes, well, that's probably not very good for what your guys are doing. And I imagine it's something like, oh, player X has this thing. Let me strap him up to the gizmo. And then you walk away because you have to go answer your 75 protocol emails. So you're not engaging with him on whatever's happening in the recovery process.
Oh, so, no, did I leave you on the gizmo? Oh, no.
What did you think of the game last night, Gerard?
Which game?
The Brooklyn game.
Defense is it's so funny. So a casual person will say like, it's just about effort, right? And it's like, well, that's part of it, but it's also scheme. Like it looked like they actually gave a crap on that end of the ball last night. And I liked what I saw. I liked the communication from everybody. I think it's obvious that Jared Allen's better than DeAndre Jordan. I mean, I don't think you needed that game to prove it, but if you were unsure, I think now you're very sure he's much better. Now, the whole idea about who starts, to me, ultimately, that doesn't matter. It's who finishes the game and who plays the most impactful minutes. And so Jared Allen can't play 48 minutes, so DeAndre's gonna have to play sometime. So fine, he plays 10 minutes or whatever he plays. The rest of the time is Jared Allen time. And I think that when they do that defensively, they'll be a very good team. The idea is, can they build the habits in, continue to connect and sustain it? Anybody can do it as a one-off. Can we continue to build on that, do it again and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat? We'll see.
How's LeVert fitting in, do you think?
He looked better last night. When he has the second unit, he really understands his balance between, in my opinion, getting his own and getting stuff for his guys, for the second unit. When he's on the floor with Kyrie and KD, he's still learning how to, like, what am I doing here, right? Because a lot of that with him is going to be, it's either catch and shoot or you've got to, here in a mismatch, go right away, right? And he's sort of learning how to do that, but that'll take some time.
David, you put the net. So I asked you the question that you asked that NBA Advanced Scout we ran into. Basically, who's playing the kind of team D that might matter in deep in the playoffs? And the Nets are on your list.
Yeah, I was surprised. I did not think they would have made it, but I looked at the metrics and it's so early. I'm not jumping to any conclusions. You'd rather be on the top end and the bottom end, even if it's early. But I mean, what Gerard started this by saying about Jared Allen. He's good. He's really freaking good. And if DeAndre Jordan would embrace his Dwight Howard role, like we know where that worked for LA last year, right? And it's still working for Dwight Howard now. And on the best defensive team in the league, the Sixers.
Very good.
Yeah. Now they played some bad teams. I looked up the strength of the offenses of the team the Sixers have played is low, but if they weren't ranked number one, we'd be more concerned about them. They're doing what they should be doing, which is encouraging. And Embiid, I wrote an article before the season about he's kind of a dark horse MVP candidate for me, and I have not looked at all to see what his stats are. I know that he's their best player,
Really
so
well.
that's always encouraging. They're following a path. He's got him. You know, Doc's got him carrying. The Suns are second in defense, and that's carrying over from what we saw at Disney. I told you my new favorite player is Mikal Bridges. I like what the Suns are doing, and I say the Magic. You know, the Magic are doing what they typically do to start the year. They went through a stretch last year; they were really bad, and so on the Magic, on the question of the Magic, or on the theme of the Magic, I put in the document for Henry, like who's the best NBA player that no one in a shopping mall would know who he was, and his answer was clever about there's plenty of small guys that look just like small dudes, but people would look at Nikola Vucevic. I think that's a really, really tall accountant, right? But he's fantastic.
Really good.
He is a fucking fantastic player.
He's really good.
I'm surprised that somebody hasn't made them a crazy offer. I mean, he's been fantastic for years.
Oh, yeah. Do you
why
know where
hasn't
he
some
started his
good team
career?
just-
Do you guys remember where he started his career?
No.
I want to
16
Philadelphia.
pick for the Sixers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When that terrible, terrible group of decision makers got rid of him fast. And he's been great ever since. That dude is
Vooch is excellent, and whenever they're in the playoffs, he's always a matchup problem for what. Even though they get swept or beaten in 5, like he is always a problem. Like they have a tough time guarding him, whoever they're playing.
They've done a great job. Fultz is good, not great, good. Cole Anthony looks like a pro. But anyhow, Cleveland is guarding. It's not going to matter. Henry said to me, playing defense that matters. Well, for ultimately Cleveland, it's probably not going to matter, but it matters to Cleveland. Like this is how do we start looking like we have some relevancy in this league and not just be a doormat? Well, it starts with actually having guards that can score. That's great. They have 2, right? With the greatest nickname of a backcourt since Sexland, since the Splash Brothers. It's fantastic. I don't know if it can last, but they're guarding. The question would be, can they both guard? Colin Sexton's good. Like he's a really good shooter and was his rookie year even. Darius Garland's gotten much better, but yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled for their franchise that they're starting to have some kind of foundation they can grow from. We're good, huh?
Yesterday, Seth Partnow on The Athletic published a little chart of open threes and different players' field goal percentages. Colin Sexton's, I wasn't totally sure what the number was, if it was his career number or this season, but Colin Sexton's percentage of making open threes is like right behind Steph. I think 5th all time.
Wow.
Covered threes, he's not that great, but he's
nobody really is.
A lot of the best shooters. He's ahead of Duncan Robinson open threes, ahead of Klay Thompson. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so that means it's cumulative. It's interesting to watch that. So for our Knick fan out there, but in all seriousness, is this the time to trade Julius Randle? Because he's playing great.
He is.
He's not the age you want for the other guys, for what they're going to do. I think maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they think they're going to be able to get some free agents and he becomes a nice player as part of that group. But He's playing the best.
I don't think he signed up long term though.
No, I think his deal's up at the end of this year, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's this year and next year. I think
it's this year.
I thought one more year after this, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, as we know, and Coach, you put it in our chat, the Tibbs are playing them way too many minutes already. So let's sell while he's sell high right now.
Yeah. They just, when you think about what they could maybe get for him in terms of long-term asset picks, whatever, and that they can take other players as part of a deal because they've got cap room. The Knicks have the most cap room. So to help someone else do a big deal, we'll take some picks from you and some players that can become picks later on too. They can really press a reset button and be like OKC, right? One of these teams that have just a ton of picks going forward. Them and the Pelicans, they could do that.
Does anybody come to mind? That you would trade Randall for?
Who's got capital?
I actually was playing around with Portland.
Oh, no, thank you.
If you're gonna play,
we're good.
I love George Randall. If you're gonna play, if you're gonna play Melo, I'd rather play Julius Randle.
No, we're not gonna play Melo. That was a mistake.
They can't help themselves. The Portland, they throw it to him, and I keep thinking, okay, maybe now's the time. He's gonna move it quickly. He gets into his jab series, and 3 seconds later, he shoots the ball. And he made the one time he made the three. But yeah, I just feel like if he's your answer, you're asking the wrong question.
What I mean, I don't dislike Melo, and I think he has value.
Me too.
The credibility that he gives the team with
Agreed.
other players, right? Like he's revered, and I think he has a heart of gold. But man, like when he's now adding more turnovers to the mix, and he already does, like, the bad D is still a thing. I mean, like, he was unplayable in Houston because his defense was so bad, and I think he worked hard to get better at it, but he's still bad at it, right? And
just remember that you know this, Henry. They tend to blitz CJ and Damian more on ball screens than they have before. Why? Because they're making somebody else make a play, not make a shot, make a play. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and also creating turnovers, which is good too. Those are small guys. CJ had a bad turnover yesterday on a side pick and roll. He's little. And if you're on the side, there's not a lot of room there. I think you can get deflections more and get steals. And so they want Melo to make more plays. That's what they want. Gary Trent Jr. is just going to chuck it. He might make it, but he's going to chuck it. And so when those two guys are on together, and to me, Terry's got to make sure the other guy's nearby. So when they blitz one of our studs, we got to throw it to the other stud and then play downhill from there. You can't let one of these other guys make a play. They're not good enough to do it yet.
Yeah. I'm bummed. I'm bummed at all the Melo minutes so far. It's not just working.
And one last thing, a shout out to Billy Donovan. I watched the Bulls play last night. Obviously, we talked about this. They competed. They were getting drilled. I'm sure Henry was feeling good about himself after the first quarter. And Chicago just stayed with it and guarded and they ran a lot of great stuff. Chicago looked like they were based in Germany. They moved the ball side to side. They didn't always get layups out of it. They took a lot of threes too, but no, he's got them playing the right way. And they've won 4 or 5. Now they beat a bad team twice in that, but still, Zach LaVine played terribly last night and they still won. So Billy, at first I thought, poor Billy, he left a team that was thought would be terrible, but was pretty good. What a perfect situation to be in because there's no expectation. Now he's on a team that might be terrible, but with high expectations, but he's kind of turned that around and the Bulls have a little bit something going. They just need to upgrade their talent more, but he's done a good job there.
Gerard, who's your guy who would not be recognized in a mall?
Oh, you're going to have a tough time being Vucevic.
Yeah, Vucevic, that's a good one. I mean, the only one I would say it would be because he's small and tiny is the Cheese Man. Because you see,
you got to pick a good player.
Like, who's he?
Teammates don't recognize him half the time.
I'll tell you what, I was watching warm-ups and it was TJ McConnell and 5 coaches all wearing like Sixers warm-up gear, and I was like, they're all TJ McConnell. Like everybody out there looks like TJ McConnell. Like,
but what good player isn't so easy to recognize? That's hard.
That's hard. A good one, that's hard.
Yeah.
I think if you let me pick the outfit, I could get Trae Young through a mall, no problem.
Oh, you're not wrong. I saw him in a hat the other day, and I thought,
yeah,
you've been interviewed. after a Hawks game. You'd think I'd clue in. I'm like, wait a second, who's that? Because his hair kind of helps define him, and he was wearing a hat. I had no idea who he was.
He's a size human that malls have a lot of. Like, he just is. Like, he does.
And
like those
John,
6'5", 6'6" guys, everybody's wondering, is that a basketball player? But once you're
and John
Trae Young
Collins,
really is. Like,
John Collins is the name we'll be talking about, and he right now could walk in on America.
Well.
You wouldn't know.
He's playing well.
That dude's good.
Yeah.
Playing really well.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Gerard. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, David. Thank you, Lindsay. You're not here. We'll see you guys on Friday.